If you're a rock guitarist, you at least know 2 chords, a power chord and the Jimi Hendrix chord. The Hendrix chord always sounds awesome, but many guitarists don't understand it. So what is it? I recently did a cover of Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix where the Hendrix chord is very prominent in the chord progression. Now the chord shape's not that easy. It uses all 4 fingers of the left hand. The way he uses it in Purple Haze, kind of start in this kind of 6th, 7th, 8th fret area of the fretboard. Middle finger's on the 7th fret A string, and that's going to be our root note. Then our first finger's on the D string, 6th fret. Then our ring finger is going to be on the 7th fret G string. And then lastly, our pinky on the B string, 8th fret. Put them all together. We get the Hendrix chord. Now, the technical name for this chord is obviously not the Hendrix chord. It is dominant 7 sharp 9. Now, usually when it's written, we kind of just see it as 7 sharp 9. So in this case, it'd be E7 sharp 9. But it's important to know that when we just see a 7, there's an implication that it's a dominant 7. Unless it says major 7 or minor 7 right next to it, it's assumed dominant. And the same thing goes for 7 chords, 9 chords, 11, 13, flat 9, sharp 9, all the crazy things. If we don't see a distinction that says major this or minor that, it's actually kind of implying that it's a dominant. Now, obviously, we have skipped over a very important step. What does the word dominant mean? If you would like to support me and this channel, go check out my Patreon. The link is in the description below. Over there, you'll find tons of great guitar lessons, all with tab, covering scales, licks, techniques, and much more. You also get early access to videos, and you can sign up for one-on-one lessons with me. Thank you guys so much for the support. Let's get back to the video. Now, dominant is kind of another word for the 5 chord, that if you built the major scale, we go to the 5th note. The 7th chord built off that note is going to be what we call a dominant chord. Now, that's implying a major 3rd and a flat or a minor 7th. Typically, it would sound like this. Now, if we're looking at an E dominant 7 chord, we're going to have, of course, we have 1 major 3rd, 5, and flat 7. And the notes would be E, G sharp, B, and D. The G sharp is the major 3rd, and the D is the flat 7. Now, what is the sharp 9? Because that is just the dominant 7 chord. That would just give us this. What makes that sharp 9 sound? Now, what we're adding is, in this case, when we're looking at it from the key of E, it's actually an F double sharp. So what we're doing is finding an F, moving it up 2 frets. 1, 2. And that's what our pinky was playing. Now, typically we call this note a G note. Typically 8th fret B string is a G note. But in this context, because it's a sharp 9, which in E, in the key of E, the 2nd note is F, which is equivalent to the 9. And since we're playing that and it's going to have to be some kind of F, it ends up being F double sharp. Because also our G's already taken up, which is typically the 3rd, by the G sharp, which is the major 3rd. So technically, it is a G note, but in this instance, we're going to have to technically refer to it as F double sharp. Now, in other genres like jazz or blues, the 7 sharp 9 chord is rather common, actually. It's very often used in 2-5-1 progressions to add a little bit of distance, or in a blues, even in a 12-bar blues on the 5 chord. Some people, instead of just going, they'll go add the sharp 9 version of the dominant chord. But in all those instances, what it's doing is adding a form of tension that wants to be resolved up a 4th or down a 5th to the root. Like I said earlier, it's a dominant chord, which is a 5 chord. So in the scale shapes, I'm not going over all the major scale shapes and stuff like that. But if we moved up a 4th, we'll get back to our 1. So if we played E7, sharp 9, it's going to want to go back to the A, which is either down a 5th or up a 4th. And often when you're soloing over that, you might hear guys play like all third scale, whole tone, maybe even Lydian dominant or diminished, or pretty much all kinds of different crazy, dissonant, tension building scale shapes over that. But they're all doing the same thing. They're all just building tension to want to be released back to the root. Now, with that said, Hendrix, he uses none of that. It's not the 5 chord. It's not using to build tension necessarily. It's actually the root chord. It's E7 sharp 9, and we're in E. He's actually using it as the 1 chord, which is very strange. And it begs the question, he's not using these altered scales and these crazy different things. He's just playing the pentatonic. Why does that work? Now for a second, let's take a quick look at the minor pentatonic scale. E minor pentatonic looks like this. Importantly, let's look at the intervals. We have the root, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, and then minor 7. Let's keep an eye on the thirds here. So we got flat 3, minor 3rd, same thing, or flat 7, minor 7th, whatever you want to call it. Right, now let's go look at the E7 sharp 9 Hendrix chord. What do we have? What's shared? We have obviously the roots shared, right? We have the E note. Then we have this weird G sharp, which is a major 3rd interval. We don't see that in the pentatonic. Now in the chord shape, we go to the D. That is the flat 7, minor 7. We do see that. So now we have 2 notes out of the 5 of the pentatonic that we know will work. Now lastly, that sharp 9 that we called earlier an F double sharp. Now, obviously, there's not technically a sharp 9 in the minor pentatonic scale, but that minor 3rd, in this case, is a G note, and F double sharp is a G note. So now we're just using different names for the same exact note. So now we have 3 killer notes that from the pentatonic that are in this chord. Now, all we have to do is take a kind of a leap and just imply the 5th, which is not in this particular way of playing this chord, but we can just assume the 5th is there. So now that's a shared note. So we'll be sharing a B note. So now how many notes do we have that are shared? We have 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So 4 out of the 5 pentatonic notes are shared in the E7 sharp 9 Hendrix chord. Now, the G sharp is still there. It's very prominent in the chord, but that's kind of in a situation where the pentatonic is great to go. Right? Typically, that's kind of the minor 3rd, major 3rd blues thing. If we're going to be really nerdy, we could call it the sharp 9 to major 3rd thing in this context, which is way over theoretical. It's really just pentatonic. We throw in that pentatonic. Also, obviously, the perfect 4th works great. And then also, typically, the blues note works fantastically. So the reason it sounds awesome when Hendrix plays it, even as a root chord, which is typically a dominant 5 chord, is because it shares a lot of notes with the pentatonic scale. So we see this crazy chord, which over this chord, you know, kind of, you can start throwing in some crazy, all these kind of crazy scales, or you can keep it simple, and the pentatonic works absolutely fantastic, which is what Hendrix does. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found this video very entertaining and informative, and I'll see you guys back next time.